Hi, and welcome to this episode of Rediscover St. Croix. As you can tell by my gear, I'm about to take you and a group of kids on a hike. That's right, we're about to explore a western portion of the island that's most familiarly known by its name. Have you ever heard of Annalee Bay? I'm sure you have, but do you really know about this area and its history? Curious? I am too. Come on, let's go on a hike.
The significance of the Northwest, there are three or four reasons. One, the topography is the most steep part of St. Croix. Two, the cultural significance of the Maroons who live here. Three, the terrestrial environment, the plant community. And four, the marine environment and the connection from this part of the island to the other parts of the Caribbean, like for example, St. John, St. Thomas, Puerto Rico, and Haiti. So the Northwest is international. So extremely, and lastly, people die here. People give their life here. People fall down to rocks, and people that could die. People were hunted here and killed.
And those people were the Maroons. Maroon is the name given to slaves in the Caribbean that refused to be held captive and escaped from plantation owners. Evidence and accounts of Maroon activity can be found throughout the Western Hemisphere in places like Jamaica and Haiti and here on St. Croix. In every instance, Maroons use the topography of an area as a method of escape and a means of defense. On St. Croix, the rough and treacherous landscape of the Northwest was ideal for their survival as free people. And it's this area that we will be exploring today with our guide Olasee Davis and members of the Rising Stars Summer Camp. Now the hike that we are on is about a 1.5 to 2 miles walk down a rugged dirt road to Wills Bay. Along the way, we'll be learning about the vegetation in the area, what the Maroons use to survive, and other interesting facts. First interesting thing we come across, this inkberry tree.
Now this plant, here we call it Christmas tree. This was the tree that was used going back from in the enslaved African on the island during the Christmas season. And as a kid growing up in St. Thomas here in St. Croix, our parents used to cut these trees down after Thanksgiving, getting ready for the Christmas season. It has to call inkberry. You notice there's berries on the tree itself. When the berry mature, it turns white, and inside is the ink. Like a dye color is used medicinally as well. You can use it to write, on papers. You can see it's very flexible. See, it's a very flexible tree. So folks here in the island use this here to go fishing in. They cut off all the side shoot, and you see how it is, very flexible, back and forth. So the people who live here 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 75 years ago, live off the land. So when they mention about the inkberry tree, the Christmas tree, this is the particular tree they're talking about. It's the evergreen tree, which means it's basically have green flowers or green leaf all year round. Okay? So if you're going fishing in those days, the folk will take this, they cut off the shoots, these shoots here, put a little fishing line, and that's how they catch the fish. Today now we have this fancy ways of catching fish, okay? The berries are not edible. The berry used for medicinal use, and if there was a white one, I would open it and show you inside. It's a dark bluish color. And that berry being crushed, they put in a mat and pestle, crush it, and a little bit of water. And they get that, for example, like a feather from a chicken. You have a hole, it suck up the ink, and then they write on a paper. They call inkberry.
Now this is a very interesting vine. It produces bright red seeds that were once used to ward off evil spirits. But you may also want to stay away. If ingested, they can be deadly.
This particular plant we call jumbi beads. These are the beads right here. 7 seeds can kill a full-grown cow. So you can imagine what we do is you digest this here. Now this plant is one of the plants that the Maroons use to protect themselves. What I mean by that, by spirit, what they call jumbi. So they make a bracelet from the seed itself. And when a child is born, they tie it around the hand as a bracelet, and that to protect them from evil spirit. Why interesting here in the islands, many years ago, the older folks used the beads in the lamp, in the kerosene lamp. And of course, those folks was very poor in those days. So by putting the bead inside the lamp, the bead expand, and then oil will release slowly. At night, as you're going home, you're walking toward the house, and the jumbi follow you. And as you open the door, there's the lamp. But if you don't have the beads in the lamp, you get walking backward inside the house. That's part of our tradition. Now in South and Central America, the Indian also use this jumbi bead when cheering bantu as well, but they didn't put it around the hand, they put it around the neck. So see, this tradition comes way back from Africa, and the Maroons who live here more than 150 years ago, and going back to 1650s, they use this bead as part of the spiritual protection against what we call jumbi.
As I mentioned before, the terrain is rugged. Even though there is a pathway, one still has to be very careful walking. It gives a sense of what the Maroons had to endure to remain free. According to Olasee, the Maroons survived by foraging for food and or stealing what they could from the town.
They basically gather wild fruits, berries, and they also migrated down in the town like in Rediscover, and where they steal foods and come back to this part of the islands as well. So they were not farmers per se.
Nonetheless, the Northwest region provided enough food sources for them, like this fruit.
This is what we call locusts, other food source of the Maroons in this part of the island. Now the locusts are also called stinking too. The reason for that is, you know, you go outside and the rain catch you, your foot get wet or your socks get wet, and if shoe smell stinks, that's the word stinking too. So inside in here there's a powdery substance that the Maroons eat. So I will do a demonstration for you and open this one here. Oh, this one looks really good, but it have an unusual smell to it. This is the part that they consume, and what happens is it sticks to your hoof or your mouth, but it doesn't kill you, but it have a strong odor, and then it have a seed. See seed right here. So this one, the particular food that was used. Now to open this some more, yeah, go look at the powder. This is the edible part. You can make a nice drink with it. The shell, on the other hand, is used to insecticides. The shell, what it does, they grind the shell down to like sawdust, like, you know, you're doing carpentry, and then they sprinkle the shell along the house or along the doors. So at night, you know, you don't get centipedes and other insects crawling inside. So this is used as the insecticide too as well. And this is the meat of it. So one of the food that many years ago that the Maroon eat in this part of the island. You open it, in the inside part is open, and you can eat the inside of it. But what happened, it tastes very good. When you eat it, it gives stinking breath. So as kids, Back in the 60s, we got them in this island, which I had them in our schoolyard. We look for one, crack it open, eat it, tastes pretty good. Look for a girl, kiss her, and get stinking bread. That was the 1 hour game.
I'm glad no one ever tried kissing me after eating that. Other food sources for the Maroons were guava berries and red man jack.
This tree here, I give it a tree common name. They call it turpentine, lumber gumbo, or tourist tree. You see the peel, you notice here, when they get sunburn. See? And they get the name tourist tree. This particular tree have gum in it. The gum is edible. For example, you notice with those who are carpenters, that when they're making furnitures, they look at paint and they paint the wood if it could stick together. Come from this, turpentine. Traditionally in the island, the lumber, gumbo, or touristry is used as fence posts. In other words, they plant them in rows. That's part of the tradition for boundaries. And of course, the tree have many medicinal use. It's a deciduous tree. It let you know when the spring rain is coming. Late in the year, in the fall season, the leaf begin to defoliate, which means begin to drop. They change different colors. And by around January or February, there's no leaf on the tree. Coming to the spring, leaf begin to appear on the tree. Okay? So this again is called lumber gumbo. Now, if you get a cut, you can take the gum from this tree and put the gum on the cut. It will slow your bleeding down. All right?
Are most of the trees this tall, this large?
They got trees larger than this. It depends. This is a native, and it's very resistant against hurricane. These trees, if you go in a cliff, they're very short. Or in a valley, it gets very tall. So it depends on topography where the tree grows. So you got from short to very tall.
Now here is another attractive but dangerous plant. Comacladia dodone, locally known as Christmas bush. This plant has colorful leaves with sharp spines. It has the same active chemical irritant found in poison oak and poison ivy. The common side effect from being scraped by the spines of this plant is a severe rash. However, it is known to have also caused respiratory failure in some extreme cases. According to Olasee, this plant was used as a natural defense by the Maroons to cover their tracks and secure their hiding places. Really hot. My toes are killing me because these hills are so steep. But I'm not tired though. I'm not tired. I'm gonna make it. A little over a mile into the hike, we come across this structure that dates back to 1796. It was once a dungeon for Maroons that were captured. It is said that slaves would be held in this small space for weeks to months at a time. At the end of the hiking trail, you end up at the Wills Bay and Annalee Bay baths. According to Olasee, this is one of the shoreline caves along the northwest that Maroons hid in. It is said that there are caves along the rugged hillside where Maroons found refuge. So far, there hasn't been any real evidence of these caves, but it's something we're definitely going to look into. For now, we'll say goodbye to this part of Annalee Day and travel west to Maroon Ridge, a sacred place where historians say Maroons took their last stance. But before we can get to Maroon Ridge, we must first, as we always do, take a short hike. Now the path is a narrow and winding incline.
Everybody doing all right?
Along the way, we come across some plant species that we saw on our first hike, like this one. Remember the Christmas bush?
If you notice on the leaf itself, you see thorns sitting right here on both sides. So if this stick you really good in the flesh, many times you'll break out with ooze on the skin. Otherwise, in 5-10 minutes, your skin is break out with sores all over. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to absorb in the bloodstream. And for some people who are very sensitive, possibility can kill them. So the sap for this plant here is used for ringworm. It requires Vaseline. What Vaseline make from? So they take the Vaseline, mix with the sap, and the Vaseline reduce the poison in the sap, and then apply it to your hand. And if you get, for example, ringworm, there's a couple of things you can do without even going to the doctor. You can get a lime, cut it in half, rub it with powder to get a ringworm, because it's contagious. And you can get the blue that the parent wash your clothes with, and then you can get this and put it on your hand. And about a week or two, it kills the ringworm. It's a traditional way. The folks who lived here many years ago, like the Maroon we talk about later on, they use poisonous plants. And also, look, when they run away, they use plants to deter the dogs or those who hunting them. So otherwise, the dog cannot pick up the scent or the person.
The moral of the story is, stay away from this plant when you see it. And then there is this structure, a lighthouse built by the Danes in 1912. It's said to be the oldest and only true lighthouse on St. Croix. After another 10 to 15 minute walk up a very narrow and treacherous path, we finally reach the top of Maroon Ridge. Here we learn about the history of the area and why some consider it a very sacred place.
This section of the island here is the last resistant areas of the Maroon to colonial power. This part of the island, slaves jump off on these cliffs you see right here and kill themselves. So now, on this side here, on top of the virgin forest, they live in these areas here of the island that have the most steepest cliff of the island. And when the Danish ship were leaving Rediscover to go out, these Maroon make raft and they go out in the ocean, capture these ships and migrate to Puerto Rico during the 16 and 1700s and other parts of the Caribbean. In fact, there was Maroon all the way from Haiti that was here before Denmark arrived here during the 1633s. I mean, not 1633, 1733, 1734.
Now it's important to note that Maroons who were captured were severely punished. Most oftentimes, they lost limbs. Many times they were hung or beheaded. A main reason why so many refused to be captured and instead jumped to their deaths off these cliffs.
If you is a Maroon in a runaway and they caught you, they could cut off your head, cut off your tongue, cut off your foot, cut off your hand, You remember now, you were not a human being. You was an enslaved African. Throughout the Caribbean, they look for the most difficult place where they can be found. And this an entire St. Croix, this area here going back the northwest of the island was the most difficult place. In fact, in 1754, when they began to survey St. Croix, this part was still in forest. They never surveyed this area here because, until years later, because of the topography and because of the dense forest. So this area was considered to be Maroon country, whole this watershed and going right back. So these oceans you see right there, they migrated. You notice, you can look out, you can see St. Thomas, St. John, you see Tortola, and the Clyde, you can see Puerto Rico, and Colombia from this side. So they migrated, went that part of the wall. So we are connected to Puerto Rico, St. Thomas, St. John, Tortola, and other parts of the Caribbean from this section of the island. And now along these hillsides, a mountainous area, there's cave. There's a cave over here that have a 2 compartment. I'd have 2 compartments where you could just go inside the cave, like 2 bedrooms, so to speak. And there's cave along the coast too as well. Now this individual used to go down in town, like first for example, and they will steal food and come back this area here. And where we're standing right now, there was trees in this particular area. There was no acacia and maran bush. So they come down in the night and even sometime in the day, they mingle with the other folks there and migrated back in this part of the island. Now there's 3 areas in the Virgin Island where the individual jump off and so-called commit suicide. Maroon Ridge, this area here, Maroon Hole, Mary Point in St. John, and Ram's Head.
What is important is that most times when you had Maroon settlements, they were on islands that had a lot of high hills with thick forests. Not a small island like St. Croix. And the Danish man who wrote the article said that St. Croix is unique because it is one of the only places in the Caribbean where you find such a large number of Africans able to establish Maroon settlements for such a long period of time. You find it in Haiti, you find it in Jamaica, in Panama, South America, and the Dominican Republic, and in Dominica. But you really don't find large, long Maroon settlements on small islands. On small St. Croix, the Africans were brave enough to come up here and live independently of their slave masters.
This was truly an interesting and educational experience. It goes to show how rich the island is in history and how places that are seemingly ordinary have extraordinary stories. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Rediscover St. Croix. And always remember to cherish your home, this beautiful island, but most of all, cherish each other. We'll see you next time.